I make it 6:06, there being a quorum present. I'll call the meeting to order, and I will read off the names. If you're here, please say here or I or yes or something of an affirmative nature. Dana.
Here.
Emil.
Here.
Lauren.
Sorry, unmuting here. Yes.
She was. Kristen Kasner.
Here.
Yeah. Rosemary Kennedy.
Here.
Jack Lawrence is here. Rick Mitchell. He said he wasn't going to make it, didn't he? I think he did. Okay, Rick is not here. Kristen Piper.
Here.
And David Wanger.
Here.
All right.
Yes. Here and yes.
Okay, Caroline, take it away.
Okay, so with me from Weston and Sampson today, of course, I have Sydney with me. And I also have three sort of subject area experts. And this first data presentation, please bear with us because this is our first one that we've done, includes Frank Getchell, who is a water expert, and they'll talk a little bit more about themselves when we start the presentation. Jim Reardon, who is a planner who works with me, but he also does a significant amount of water and wetlands type work. And Joanna Nadeau, who is also a planner, and she specializes in natural resources and sustainability. So those are the topics that we're going to cover today. And I will let them run with it right now.
All right, I think I'm giving a brief introduction about myself. I'm Jim Reardon. I'm a team leader at Weston and Sampson. I oversee the planning group there, and am somebody, like Caroline said, who has done a lot of work with environmental planning over the last 28 years, both for state agencies. I used to be a state employee in Rhode Island, and then with municipal agencies on the water resources side, as well as on the planning and municipal master plans. Frank, I think you're up next.
Yes, good evening. I'm Frank Getchell. I'm a hydrogeologist with Weston and Sampson. I sit primarily with our water resources group. I'm actually based out of our Portsmouth, New Hampshire office. I've got about 40 years of experience, primarily New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Actually, for the first 5 years of my career up in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. I recently have come back up this way about 2 years ago, and I've got a lot of master plan work behind me, working for planning boards primarily down in the New Jersey, New York area. But obviously, between that and my experience as a hydrogeologist in the area, I'm here to speak about the resources and the groundwater supplies that you have in Hamilton, as we know right now, at least the information that we currently have available to us.
Joanna?
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Joanna Nadeau. I've been with Weston Sampson for 1.5 years. I've been working in planning for over a decade, providing sustainability planning support and assessments to communities around the country. And then more recently focusing on climate resiliency, particularly, and have some background as well in water conservation and water sustainability specifically. So really excited to talk to you all more today.
Great, thank you.
All right, and the first slide has to do with facilities and services. And in general, these are just a few sort of high-level observations, kind of, you might call them almost fun facts, I guess, regarding facilities and services in Hamilton. And when we're talking about facilities and services, it's a pretty broad topic. It includes things like all the work that Public Works agency or department might do. So your Department of Public Works has an important role in maintaining town infrastructure. They're generally the primaries on that. And so looking at, the stormwater infrastructure that they support, the roads, the wastewater and water infrastructure. Many public works agencies are also responsible for recreational facilities and things of that nature. But this spans beyond that too. So also the buildings throughout the town, your town hall, other school buildings and things like that. Services incorporate a wide range of areas too. So they're the services that are provided, say, by your public works department, which may be in charge of things like trash pickup and snow cleaning and those sorts of things. But in addition to that, services that are provided by your school system. So of course, the educational services, the after school activities, and then a variety of other things too, like towns may also provide services for senior citizens, and various other things too. So a couple of high-level observations, or again, these are almost more like fun facts, I guess. The Hamilton Town Hall renovations due to the architectural features and structural damage that has been sustained there are being funded by the Community Preservation Act for update.
Jim, pardon me, Jim, apologies for interrupting.
Sure, go right ahead.
And regarding the town hall, that's an effort still to be achieved
The source.
upon citizen approval. And there have been, I think, 2 now failed initiatives in that regard in terms of approval of the bonding, the debt structure. This entry in the first slide is, I don't think, accurate. The CPA money was going to be a contribution toward the total cost.
Mm-hmm.
And since the bonding was not approved, nothing is ongoing. There's nothing in the present tense in that regard. And this next comment foreshadows a bit the text when we get to the text that Carolyn had provided us. The CPA money is essentially a tax. It's 2% of the tax on a property added to the tax burden. So to say that it's separated from the tax burden, I think is a bit misleading. It's clearly money derived from the public. It's predicated upon the property tax structure. And I think that's got to be made clear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. Appreciate the comments. Let's see, the next item on here, the towns of Hamilton and Wenham have multiple partnerships for providing municipal services. I think you have a nice relationship with Wenham, and I know that there are a lot of cooperative sort of arrangements that you folks have set up. The town is actively working to improve flood preparedness and emergency response capacity. And then these last couple, the water supply is fed by groundwater wells, and there have been past efforts to replace or rehabilitate at least one of those wells. And of course, Hamilton relies primarily on septic systems. We know there are a couple of exceptions to this. I know there's a school campus in town that has, I believe, its own package treatment system, but generally speaking, Hamilton relies on on-site systems, septic systems in general for wastewater. Before we move on, I know there was comment on the first item. Do folks have comments on these other items before we move forward, or do we want to Caroline, do we want to move forward with the items and then take questions later on?
Yeah, please, if we could just kind of hold off, because unless something, is super emergency, let's wait till the end to talk about some items. But another thing, Jim, is just make sure you're talking in the microphone because you're a little muffled.
Oh, apologize for that. I'll try and move closer.
So Carolyn, you don't want us to raise issues as Jim goes along?
Weigh it out. I think like the issue you pointed out with the CPA money was relevant, so if it's something that we need to know about, something that's urgent, then sure, put it out there. But I don't want to stifle the whole presentation on, every little fact, because we'll never end. So I do want to get beyond the presentation and then we can have a discussion.
But we want to correct misimpressions. I would suggest that you might talk to Patrick and the town manager about the handshake category.
Yeah, I know. It's a bit loaded.
and other initiatives that may be underway with other communities.
Yeah.
In addition.
Other regional partnerships. Yep.
Yes. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks again. All right, next slide, please. So this is a representation of where some critical facilities are in town. When we're talking about critical facilities, we're really talking about those things that are critically important, particularly in an emergency sort of situation, but just in general, for providing services, providing utilities and things like that make the town operate. So it's for residents and it's for commercial properties as well. So this is the term critical facilities. I think you can interpret somewhat broadly to include things like emergency services like fire, police, ambulance, stuff like that, as well as things that relate to more along the lines of utilities like water supply, wastewater, things of that nature. But then this also includes facilities that might be important in an emergency. So say, for example, a school building or maybe a library or something like that may get used in an emergency situation for shelter. Also, because those sorts of facilities provide critical information service, they also rise to the level of critical facilities. Of course, hospitals end up on this list quite a bit, and other providers of health and even community center type things tend to end up on this list. There's not a hard and fast definition, but these are the sorts of things that typically end up in hazard mitigation plan, if you're familiar with those, municipal vulnerability preparedness plan. They're important for keeping the town running. Next slide, please. And for this slide, I'm actually going to turn it over to Frank Getchell.
Thanks, Jim. This map is basically just trying to put together in one snapshot a lot of the resources that are currently available to the town, that the infrastructure relies on, such as the water supply, even things such as wastewater disposal relative to the different types of soils that are out there, and some of the resources that are even related to some of the quality of life factors like open space, farmland preservation, and so forth. So there's a lot of things going on here, but the takeaway is that, from the perspective, at least focusing on the water resource, and let's see if I can, I don't know, I guess I can't really use a cursor, but you can see the lime green area that there's a band that kind of goes north-south through the center of town. There's another area down in the southwest corner, and another area over towards the southeastern portion. And they correspond to those portions of the sand and gravel aquifer that have been mapped out that tend to have a higher yield potential. And those are the areas where a lot of your wells are focusing on also. So you've got a really good history as far as your groundwater supply goes. One of the things to keep in mind too is when you look at a map like this, it also gives you an idea of these different land uses, the different types of soils, which reflect the geology. They can affect the water quality, and to a certain extent, they're kind of also why over time the town has had issues with its wells in terms of their performance, and you've had to go through the process of replacing them. They're all due to natural conditions, but the fact that it's so varied kind of, I think, lays out for you why things might be different in different parts of the town relative to the water supply. I know that based on some of the information that we've been able to gather so far, that performance issues are still plaguing several of your wells. Those wells that are identified as satellite wells, basically those are replacement. I believe your Idlewild number 2, I think it is currently being looked at. The satellite is being looked at to be replaced. So, you know, what you're seeing is just kind of a typical situation for a groundwater supply, and it's kind of reflective of what's going on geologically. One of the things to take a look at this also with this kind of map is you've got a lot of water. And that water, besides, you know, touching upon what Jim was mentioning earlier about things like, you know, looking at issues with respect to infrastructure threats and so forth, and we'll get into that later on, but climate change and so forth, that water also kind of gives you an idea of the reliability and to a certain extent, the sustainability of the resource that you have in the area in general. There are a lot of other parts of the country, a lot of parts even in the state, as one goes further west, that don't have this amount of variability and don't have these resources. So in that respect, Hamilton definitely has a lot going for it as far as the potential and ways that it can deal with that. Could we go to the next slide, please?
Frank, can I ask one question on that? It's Jack Warren.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
On that, where you're showing over on the left, that's the Ipswich River, and that is our primary source of water. And the problem with Idlewood too is that it has a high organic content, which we're going to have to build $1.5 million filtration addendum to our water treatment plant in order to put it back into operation. We can't do it now because it screws up our quality. And over there on the right, that's North Coastal. So my fundamental question is, which we do not tap into now, that is also Manchester's water supply. It's not exclusive to Manchester, and that is kind of our backup because we're competing with a whole lot of other towns for the Ipswich water. Can we mix water in our system from North Coastal and Ipswich, or is that not allowed?
So Jack, when you say mix in terms of the waters being compatible with one another, or more in terms of moving over the divide?
Yeah, moving over the divide. It'd be a question of pulling water from North Coastal, probably via the Manchester water treatment plant, and put that in the same pipes, or do we have to segregate the Ipswich and North Coastal waters from each other?
Typically, especially with a system like the Ipswich that's pretty sensitive already to overdrafting and having requirements for passing flow and so forth, usually they're not going to look very favorably about, you know, trying to do that, to take water out of one basin to put it into the other basin. So, I mean, that's something that we'll look at in the overall and identify that and detail it more. But generally speaking, that's something that's usually not going to fly.
Well, we're kind of fighting with a whole lot of other towns for that water right now, and it's that's going to be a big deal as we go along here. And so, okay, I won't take up any more of your time. Go ahead,
Jack. But you did bring up a good point, and we'll get onto it later on. But you know, one of the things in terms of when we look at things like land usage and the different types of geologic materials out there, and things like stormwater management and so forth, is the concept of looking what you have as far as land use ordinances and trying to retrofit them or have them looking ahead, looking forward to be more resilient. And some of that may have to do with your stormwater management practices. Maybe one of the things to do is to try to build in more recharge, from water that typically might get lost as pure runoff into a surface water body. It's not going to necessarily be the silver bullet, but it's kind of one of these things that sort of helps.
Yeah, there's been
Okay.
talk of trying to get a reservoir and fill them up in the wintertime, but that's a pretty expensive option at this point.
No, I'm talking about things such as stormwater management in terms of, subdivisions, or currently what you're doing with your MS4 permits and so forth, or even things such as there's possibility, some communities do what they call skimming. So when you have excess amount of runoff, what you might want to do, rather than seeing it going down the Ipswich and on its way out to the ocean, is possibly in certain areas, that requires studies, and there's modeling that's been done by the USGS over the last decade or so that looks at the possibility of diverting some of that excess flow and finding a way to get it back onto the aquifer to help out with recharge. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Not something like infrastructure wise, but more in terms of just the resource itself.
Well, that would have to be done upstream, right?
That would be the preference. Yeah, you want to keep
Yeah.
it in the basin as long as possible, and you want to keep it in the aquifer as long as possible.
Yeah, okay, good, go
All right.
on, keep going. I don't want to bog you down here.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah.
And this map here is kind of a takeoff from the one that we previously had. So it's focused more on just water supply or resources that could be used for water supply. Obviously, with respect to Hamilton, we rely 100% on groundwater. There you can see those 3 green areas. They represent the higher yielding parts of the aquifer system that we rely on here. But also what's also being shown is some shading that's related to groundwater protection. You're probably familiar with, over the last several decades, you guys have gone through the whole process of putting together a groundwater protection overlay district. And what you're seeing here is kind of a hybrid. I believe the original districts that was put together back in the 80s, early 80s, were not really in tune with currently what the state was doing relative to what they call their zone 1, zone 2, zone 3s. And so what you have here now is more of a refined image. What's interesting is that you have somebody's zone 2 all the way up in the northwest corner of the town. In essence, what that does, and I believe up in that area there, is that Wenham up there, their well field, or Ipswich? I forget which of the 2 municipalities. Their wells are on the other side of the river, and their protection zone for quality actually extends into Hamilton. That has no reflection on your supply. It's really meant to protect their supply. So, I think you mentioned earlier when we were talking that, one thing about Hamilton is there are several other municipalities that rely on your water resources also. And I think that's something that has to be kept in mind when, you look at your master plan and so forth.
Yeah,
So that's kind of the takeaway here.
Ipswich is downstream, and they are in worse shape than we are, because Ipswich is really the only game in town for them. Anyway, it's a long story and a complicated one. So,
No problem.
yeah.
Okay. And so I think one other takeaway on a map like this is, besides when you look at the groundwater protection overlays, they usually tend to focus on water quality. And I think as part of updating and the master plan, one of the things to make sure is that what's also built into there is protecting those areas from the quantity aspect, kind of what you were just asking me about earlier, Jack.
Yeah.
When we look at things like recharge, maybe it's something more passive in terms of promoting zoning and land use that keeps that land in its current condition, and minimizes the addition of any kind of impervious surfaces beyond what's already there.
Yeah, our biggest problem, as I say, is organic. Our wells are all shallow, gravel packed, and they all have a high organic content. The Ipswich generally has a high organic content, but Idlewood too is the worst, and that's why it's offline at the moment.
That's kind of common for pretty much most of New England.
Yeah.
The tannins in the water bodies, and what it kind of reflects is the nature of the geologic deposits that make up the aquifer, conditions that prevailed when they were laid down. And they also reflect, to a certain extent, even though they may not be under the influence, there still is a relationship with the local surface water bodies.
Mm.
And so that will affect it too. One of the things that we're hoping to do is to, in getting a better understanding of what we have here as far as your water supply, is getting additional information from your water utility regarding the construction of these wells, the performance of these wells, and the history of them relative to water quality, like you say, with respect to organic material, but also with respect to iron and manganese, and also with respect to some of the other secondaries.
Yeah, we got all of that stuff.
Everybody does. You're not alone. I think that's it for me.
Okay, let's take us to the next slide there, Sydney. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just the natural resources, and we're going to cover, land, water, biological resources, and air quality. So the town is obviously, mostly flat and rolling, but you're heavily covered by wetlands and marshes and open water, so almost 40%. And so with that, plus some of the steep slope areas, the buildable area in the town is just under 50% of the town's land. So that's going to be, some of those natural constraints on development. We'll talk a little bit about the forests and the habitat areas. So wetlands, rivers, and marshes are a key place to have habitat for, fauna and flora. And you have habitat for a lot of regionally significant or rare species. And so that's, supporting your tourism. The wetlands and marshes are supporting, cleaning your water supplies, and obviously providing healthy outdoor activities for residents and visitors. We all know the Ipswich River is a gem, and it's one of the more popular paddling destinations in the state. It's also a wildlife sanctuary. And it, along with the Chabaco Lake and some of the riparian areas, support particularly some cold water fisheries, the blue-spotted salamander, and you have several Audubon identified important bird areas that cover actually more than half of the town. So, the importance of these is that some of these species are threatened by fragmentation of habitat that's happening from development in the greater area. And so you really have some valuable resources there within the town. We've talked a little bit about the drinking water, that comes from the groundwater aquifer, and Frank had mentioned, the connection with the Ipswich and the Miles Rivers and their tributaries and the aquifer. I'll just sort of say it again for clarity that the aquifer lacks hydrogeologic barriers in a lot of areas. And so because your soils are permeable, and like you said, you have some shallow wells, there is that vulnerability to contamination. And so we see, nitrate levels that are a little higher, showing that some of that nitrogen containing runoff is not being able to be broken down in the soil before it gets to the aquifer, for example. The American rivers named the Ipswich River. It's been naming the Ipswich River an endangered river for years, and this year had the dubious distinction of being the most endangered river, particularly because of the low flows and the non-point pollution. And so, as the pumping has led to dry conditions in some sections, up and down the river. And that's going to be a concern, not only for, recreation and paddling, but raises water temperatures, lowers dissolves oxygen, dries up critical habitat. And we're also now thinking ahead about how these severe or extended droughts may be coming more frequently and may be causing more of a risk to the water supplies as well. We just did a quick look at the air quality. It's rated as fair in the area, and you may have noticed in August, we have these experiences where we can be affected by national fire events, even coming through and affecting the air quality. But typically, the levels in Hamilton are not of concern. Let's go to the next slide. So this shows the impaired water bodies as assessed by the Department of Environmental Protection. And so we've got, as Frank has mentioned, some stormwater and septic systems likely affecting the Ipswich River, which has a total maximum daily load for bacteria The Chabaco Lake, like many lakes, has higher levels of mercury because of air pollution, again, not because of Hamilton specifically. You can see the red for the Miles River, which has a required TMDL as well. So this is what helps us to start thinking about strategies for improving, these impairments. You already have some things in the works, but things like green infrastructure, so stormwater management that uses nature-based solutions can help to filter runoff and reduce the impact of stormwater on these water bodies. Protecting your open space, protecting your trees, maybe increasing trees in some areas to help with that infiltration, and then also dealing with and thinking about the wastewater system and the septic systems is going to be part of thinking about the connections with these impairments. Let's go to the next slide. So you've got other details in your handout about the natural resources, which we can dive more into once we're done here. But the last section we want to talk about today is the sustainability and resiliency of Hamilton. So sustainability, that means finding a balance of interactions between the environment, our community, and our economy. We want to see humans and nature thriving in a way that sustains and supports the town. And so achieving that requires preserving, what we care about today, so it's going to be available in the future. And the town's shown some really great leadership on composting, managing wind energy uses, farmland preservation, and conservation in your land use and zoning. We cheer your success with the Green Community Program. I believe from our records, you've secured $750,000 in grant money for energy efficiency projects in the municipal facilities. And I believe the town is an off-taker of the solar array that's on the capped municipal landfill, so using some renewable energy sources. And then we've seen some interest in sustainability among the community around local foods, sustainable business operations. We saw there was a temporary farmers market operating, which is great. And maybe you can tell us more about some of the other sustainability initiatives and goals. We saw in the 2004 plan some concerns around the sustainability of kind of auto-dependent, car-dependent growth patterns, because you have that often larger lot, low density growth pattern, which also is a concern around roads to maintain. And because of the development patterns can also mean more water consumption per person. So those are some of the things I know were on your radar, almost 20 years ago. Those would all still be relevant issues today. The other area we want to talk about is resiliency. And so that's the ability to prepare for and recover from extreme events. So natural hazards, extreme storms, and climate change. So we looked at your 2019 hazard mitigation update and your MVP report, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness, if folks don't know that acronym. And saw that flooding driven by extreme rain events and hurricanes was really identified as the greatest hazard people were concerned about, particularly around risks to structures and power lines. Of course, there's other hazards you guys are facing around, major snowfalls, wind events, and needing to clear snow. Potentially some risk is there because of the Willowdale Dam or brush fires, but those are more minimal. And heat events and high heat areas within the town may be affecting people, especially where there's less tree cover. So as Frank mentioned, we're thinking about the future of your water supply and how future rain events and drought can affect your ability to do recharge. There may be opportunities to do recharge with higher rain events, but of course, drought will also constrain your groundwater supplies and can affect the quality as well as the quantity. Let's go to the next slide. So this hopefully will represent your experience, but the pink and orange are the flood inundation areas within the town. So these would be particularly good places to start to think about stormwater runoff and reducing the risk of flooding in sort of the areas closer to those during extreme events. And then considering the resilience of the community also means having emergency response actions ready. So if I hark back to Jim's critical facilities, we want to make sure people can access critical facilities, and we want to make sure anybody that has more limited mobility or might be isolated if there's a flood event that we can get to them. So that'll be something we want to make sure you're thinking about in terms of resilience as well. And these concepts of sustainability and resilience, obviously, I've already touched on a lot of other sections of the plan. So we're going to weave our recommendations for those throughout, land use and transportation. They're going to come up again and again. Okay, so I think that's the top level we wanted to cover. Thank you guys for your attention. And let's start with anything that you need us to clarify, anything that wasn't clear.
Yes, indeed. All right. Does everybody have a copy of the existing conditions and natural resources, the document, the data sheet? Because I'd like to go through that as David spoke about page by page, if we could.
Can I just, before we do that, this is Kristen Piper. This is a lot. Thank you for putting it together. This is not my world at all. So I think it's really hard for me to take this information and figure out how you include that in the master plan and then use it to inform recommendations. And so I know that's coming. I know this is just the background and the context, and maybe there isn't a question here. It's more just a comment that this is a lot. And I think we need to figure out a way to distill it down for the every man and woman so that, again, we have that background, that context, but then we can clearly make the connection between why this matters. So I guess this really just a comment and not a question.
I think what it comes down to is that as we go through this, I think a lot of it will come clear, Kristen, and I think you'll find that there's some issues here that will refine themselves and others that will simply get more complicated and will bear more particularly on the potential for where this plan might end up. So I think if we work our way through here, I think it'll kind of clarify itself to some extent, and you'll learn a lot.
Somebody said at the beginning how, part of what is necessary, why this conversation is really important is because we can gather information from reading reports and looking at maps and data, but you all have a different perspective on this information. So we're bringing it to you mostly to hear back from you like, sure, I didn't know that, or that's a lot, but also like, oh, well, but there's this other element of the story that you're not telling. We want to know that from you. So that's particularly where this conversation is helpful. And in terms of making connections to actions and issues, that is the next step. But Caroline, would you agree with that?
I would. We're on. It's a funny thing on master plans because they're all a little different. I mean, the process is as a whole similar in different communities, but how it plays out is different because each community has its own prioritizations. So what we're doing here is trying to level the playing field by putting facts out, and you are uneven. Like some of you know some things, some of you know other things. So not everybody's going to be an expert in everything. But part of the discussion too is to, what we're looking for are what are the real issues that this master plan needs to look at. We can't look at everything. And I'll repeat that master plans are high level. We're not here bean counting. We're high level and we always will stay high level. But you can help us too, not just in helping to process that information, but also because your community, like what would be the best way to communicate it? Do you think that infographics would be a great way to communicate some of this stuff? Are maps a good way? A lot of times very technical information is available in an appendix, whereas your master plan itself is something like almost like reading a magazine. It's something that's very, very user friendly. And if somebody wants to go find the details, it points them in that direction. And I tend to think those are the most successful because more people can embrace it. But your community and the touch points that people are going to want to see in the plan. So with that,
that's why we have to go through this and work through the details, and then we can clarify a lot of the stuff. Dana, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Could I just ask a very basic question before we get to the text? And that is, I've heard several references to Carolyn, your group making recommendations. So that gets me to a very basic question about what a master plan is. Is a master plan an aggregation of the consultant's recommendations, or is it an expression of the public will?
Both, right? Because the public doesn't have all of the information and we don't know what the public knows. So, you know, it has to be both. And that's really where you're pivotal here, because you're the conduit both ways. And you're also the mechanism that weighs out what those priorities are. So.
Okay, it's still, for me, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
It is. So I just wanted to make
support what Caroline was saying just there. I mean, the priorities that you folks express and the actions that you folks want to take on, goals and policies and whatnot, that's really your decision. We'll provide you the technical information to help you pick those sorts of things out. And if you get stuck on issues, we'll hopefully help you facilitate your way through that process. But it's ultimately your decisions. It's your
Yeah,
town.
recommendations comes in, like, we recommend to you what we think the plan should say. You know, that's how that's working. And those recommendations may find their way into the plan.
Right. So one of the things that I wanted to say is I really appreciate all this information. Certainly I'm learning, but as a sort of person who's been around for a while, I'm familiar with a lot of the things, although certainly not all of it. And the point I wanted to make in terms of Kristen perhaps being overwhelmed with all this information, I was thinking about this today as I was thinking about all the chapters and so forth. And I think this is good so that even though it overwhelms us right now, when we talk it through, we'll be able to break it down into pieces. And then as time goes on, we had talked about Emil's sort of very simple, very communicating plan that ties all of these pieces together. And so I think in the end, once we understand all these pieces, we can put it together in a nice flow. And it is a lot of information, and it is overwhelming. And so that's for sure. But I think between all of us, we can figure it out and come up with a nice plan that's based, I believe, is a good idea to base it on Emil's very user-friendly way to coalesce everything.
I just want to quickly comment on something Jim said a moment ago. I'm still having difficulty balancing your making recommendations with the ultimate work product. But aside from that, Jim, the ultimate direction of the town of Hamilton is to be pursuant to the wishes of the public, not the 9 people who constitute the steering committee. So a bottom line initiative has to be to garner as much public input as is possible. And that's going to be the difficult undertaking here. And that's among the things that I'm depending upon you all to guide us.
Well, I think if we can go through this discussion, Dana, do you have a point? Because I think we go through this discussion, we can all come out perhaps better informed and on the same page on both sides. Dana, you got
I'm actually at a really different place than everybody else. I think right now, I really took to heart, I have just a very specific question regarding the presentation. I really, so my question was, I think it was Jim right at the very beginning said that in that first slide or second slide, I believe it said that the town is actively working to improve emergency response capacity. And I actually didn't know that we were, so and maybe that's a question for Rosie or somebody else knows, like, what is that? Is there a new emergency response? Is there something in place or moving forward that I don't know about? I'm just curious about that. So if that's not what we're doing, if we're talking, like, I really thought we were just asking specific questions, but we seem to have gone off in different tangents. So if that's not appropriate, that's fine.
Just so you know, Dana, we're trying to merge or have another town come in with us on our emergency communication system. I think maybe that's the gist of what that comment may have been. Maybe I'm wrong, but we have our own emergency communication system right now, and we are sort of under capacity. We have a lot of unused capacity, and it's very expensive for the town. So we're trying to reach out to other towns and see if they'd like to come in with us.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's, anyway, I just want to get I want to get a baseline of information here that everybody's working off of a common foundation if we could. So if we could just go through this, because we've got this published document that was generated here a couple days ago. And I think if we go through this, a lot of these things are going to come along. And
Jack,
then
can you remind us what document, which one of the many that you're going
this
to?
is the existing
specifically?
conditions for natural resources and existing conditions, basically the existing conditions for natural resources. And I guess.
Could I ask Sydney to share that as you're talking so we can all be looking at it together?
'Cause there's the key points document, and then there's the summary narrative, which has some of the same information, but in different formats. So yeah, which one are we going through?
The summary narrative. So if you can put that up on the screen, is that possible, Caroline? You sent this a couple days ago. I don't have that capability myself. I just marked up my hard copy.
Yeah, I can do that. I'm working on it right now.
Okay, here we go. Yes, perfect. All right, starting right out with 50% of the town's land area is potentially buildable. I think you've got the shallow marsh meadows, the open water, the shrub and woodland swamp areas. There's an awful lot of the countryside too that's covered with esker formations that create steep slopes and things of that nature. Admittedly, they're gravel and they can be knocked down probably, but I think we need a much better breakdown of that 50% because I think a tremendous amount of it is also covered by conservation restrictions and in 40B, not 40B, sorry, chapter 61, A and B registrations. So I think that 50% number is really not instructive, I think is what I'm saying. And I think our friends in the planning department can probably generate a lot more better information on that. Emil, is that possible?
We were talking about that just before we got on and we were like, not so sure that we want to put that number out there. Your next data presentation after this one will be including land use. And that's where we're really going to dig into that bit of like what, and buildable even in itself is sort of, a little bit not as straightforward a concept as you might think. So yeah, we'll touch on that in greater detail next time.
Perfect.
But may I just ask quickly, Carolyn, is that 50% meant to include developed and undeveloped but buildable land, or is it undeveloped land?
The 50% is just based on, and this is sort of giving it out of context. This is the challenge of this. We were just looking at the landscape constraints, not the regulatory constraints. So this is just saying based on water coverage and, as you mentioned, sort of steep slopes and land forms, that 50% of the town can't be built on for those reasons. And that might be the better way to say it, as opposed to potentially buildable, which is gets into a whole other set of things, like you said, related to land use and open space.
Or just add a paragraph, or just add a paragraph that says, this does not include all the regulatory constraints, because if somebody sees, there are some people in this town who would see that and think, great, let's develop it. And I think it's important that, when I first saw this, I was a little taken aback, but then I realized you're just talking about the raw land itself. But so I would just maybe make that little caveat.
Well,
I would definitely flip it, that 50% is not buildable for all these reasons.
Right.
And then in your land use presentation, break it down even further of what we should be considering.
Right.
Because I completely agree, this came off the bat as like, what?
Exactly.
Turn it around. Yeah, turn
Okay,
it.
let's move. let's move. I have another question on
Yep,
the Ipswich
Jack.
River.
Jack, before we
Sorry,
move
sorry.
on, the 50%, which, does that exclude land that is already built upon? Or does it include all land, whether built upon or not yet built upon?
I don't think it does. I think that what it is the natural resources that clearly make certain parts of the land unbuildable. Kristen a moment ago made the point that this statistic, if you will, should be flipped around. So 50% is constrained. And then I think she was trying to get to, with reference to the different kind of land uses or constraints, because those are of course two different things. That if you list those things out and how much for each one of those, that you're making a clearer representation, because there are other reasons why land might be constrained too.
Right.
And if you're looking at what's buildable, developer will look at something that is constrained in certain ways and still find parts of it that are not buildable for a variety of feasibility reasons that
So,
we can't
Jim-
really speak to in a comp plan.
So Jim, just to clarify it for my aged head, the 50% as currently in the text does not include, for example, the property that my house sits on.
I think that's correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, this is the level of breakdown that I'm hoping is going to come through when we finally get something that's a little more instructive, because the 50% now is, in theory, David, your house is reconstructible as a 8-story building, I suppose, if it's a 40B. So we need to have a good breakdown on all of this area that is buildable or has been built or whatever. So I guess that's, Carolyn says that's coming, so that's good.
Okay.
Let's move on. It states here that the Ipswich River is a wildlife sanctuary. To my knowledge, that is not correct. That the river does run through the Audubon Sanctuary, and in that area it probably is a wildlife sanctuary. Am I correct in that, or not? Uh-oh.
That is what that refers to.
It's just where the Audubon is, right?
Yeah, the part that's sort of designated sanctuary is just where the Audubon is.
Okay, I think we should be clear on that, because the rest of it, therefore, is all privately owned, right? It's not a navigable waterway. So I think we
The
need to have
river-
a little- some
The river is
precision.
not a navigable waterway?
It is for a canoe, but
Yeah, oh, right, okay. It's not private, like you can't use it, but right, there's not motorboats going up and down it, if that's what you mean.
yeah, it's got dams that block it off, and the fish ladders aren't very efficient. I meant to call the Ipswich River Watershed Association and find out whether it really was a spawning habitat for alewife. I have a feeling that the fish ladders are so awful that it probably isn't, but that may be wrong on that one.
There is a move afoot, Jack,
Yeah.
between Trout Unlimited and some of the other organizations to kind of rectify those issues. So
Okay.
if it's not now, there's a good chance it may be at some point.
Well, I know the dam down in Ipswich, they vastly improved the fish ladder, but the Willowdale Dam, the fish ladder is, I don't know what a fish likes and doesn't like, but it's pretty prehistoric. What I saw, you say it was the most threatened river. I had read it was the third most threatened river. That's a distinction that probably doesn't make much difference.
Well, Jack, that's just a matter of year. It's that this year in 2021, they designated it as the most. I think last year or the year before it was the third most. So it's
Yeah.
climbing the ranks
Great.
from third to first.
Yeah, it's a horror show either way. So, all right, on air quality, I think our air quality is great. The fact that the smoke came in from the Pacific Northwest this summer is not an annual occurrence, to my knowledge. Is it? Am I wrong on that?
No, I think that's the takeaway, is that except for rare occasions, the air, pardon me, is of good quality.
Yeah,
This says fair.
this
Is it
says
good?
fair, so I don't think.
That's true,
fair is
actually. So
fair.
they're in their categories, it's in the upper ranges, but it is not in the top category overall.
So
It's in,
I think Joanna, we need to footnote that or reference that so that it's clear where that's coming from. And we might want to check back a couple of years and see whether, as I think it was Jack was pointing out, that that it may have changed because of a specific incident. And that will likely improve over the course of time because it'll revert back.
Yeah,
okay, I'll let you know that just so you know, the range that they're looking at, so it's over the course of a year that they make the determination. An excellent rating would be 0 to 19, fair is 20 to 49, and you're at 33. So we can give a little more context on the year and the source of that for sure.
That was only in August, though. Was that only in August or?
No, those are separate points. Sorry, that's not clear.
33 what, Joanna? What is the measurement?
It's an index, so it's a composition of multiple sources of information, and I'd have to pull it up to get the detail, but I can do that.
Okay, I'd appreciate that, and I would respectfully suggest the second sentence be eliminated.
I think it's important to understand when you're giving these kind of existing conditions facts too, where to understand just in your explanation, and maybe it's a footnote or reference. I mean, when we're saying fair, is it something that we need to be thinking about in action later, or is it just that's fine? I don't know, and it's hard to tell. So that's kind of the way I'm thinking about it. Of well, it's fair. Oh my gosh, so we need to do something about it, or it's kind of typical. Yeah. Anyway, just kind of understanding it in that context would be helpful.
The reason I'm pressing this point is that there was a time when we were being doused by acid rain from Midwest power plants in Ohio and so forth. Is that still the case, or is that the reason we have this lower designation?
Yeah, and we'll
that's
have to look
improved.
deeper to find that out. Jim, do you know?
Yeah, so that's improved over the course of time because primarily because of smokestack scrubbers. You have that exactly right. The pollution was coming from the west, and that's often the way that works. Factories have very tall smokestacks to get the smoke sort of out of their air shed, if you will.
Yeah.
It gets up into the jet stream, and then of course it comes back down again because a lot of the particulates and things are heavier than air. And guess what? It comes down on us in some cases. But improved technology has helped that problem out quite a bit. But I think that brings up another great point, which is that in a lot of cases, when you're talking about something like air quality, there's not a whole lot that you as a town can do about it.
Yeah.
You can make note of it. You can try and address the consequences of bad air quality. Maybe that makes more kids asthmatic or something like that. Maybe there's certain things that you can do to help them improve their health or mitigate the problem, but you probably can't improve the air quality that's coming from like Ohio or something like that. It's just out of your jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And I pulled up the map just so
distinction.
folks can see. I mean, it's part of being outside of a large metropolitan area. It's particulate matter. I agree with Jim that, this doesn't mean that you're doing something in Hamilton necessarily that needs to change, but it is something to be aware of, is that you're, while you're in an area that is quite green and, the air seems clean, I think it's important to know that you're not in sort of the top level air quality in terms of health. And that may not affect most people in your community, but it's just another data point. And so I think you said, Kristen, to know kind of where do we fall in comparison to other communities, we can give some more context on that.
Yeah, good. Okay, that's perfect. All right, I'm over on to the next community facilities and services. We talked a little bit about the town hall. The town hall is totally stalled at this point. It was voted down twice. We don't have a price. The rates are going up. We missed a wonderful opportunity. We effectively screwed ourselves, I think, and I don't know where that's going to come out. it's nowhere at the moment. So that's, the CPC was going to cover $4 million. They've got $1.1 million invested in it in the work that's been done to date. And that's going to be right down the pipe, it looks like. So that's a whole another issue.
Right.
On the schools, Dana, do we have an integrated preschool?
We do. Yes,
We do?
yes, it's at Winthrop.
It does exist?
It does exist. It's at Winthrop.
Oh, cool. Okay, that's great. I had no idea.
You know what? I don't know that I have, can you make, Sydney, are you able to make this document a little bit larger? I don't know that I have this one. Maybe I, thank you.
Okay. When we say that the town's current communication center operates as an independent department, what is it independent from? Is it not a town department? Is it not one of our services? They're not separately incorporated or anything like that, are they?
No, I think this was meant to say independent from the other departments. So do I have that right?
That it's a finite
No,
staff?
it's related to the fact that as far as our records showed, you had one related to the town of Wenham previously, and now you're operating, I think as someone was saying, now you're operating a communication center without partnership from other towns.
That's right.
That's correct.
That's right. Okay.
I just wanted to correct a number here. So when we are talking about the town hall building, we still have Jack, Mr. Naysayer, we still have until next November to fulfill that town hall renovation grant from the CPC. And actually the money that the CPC has provided thus far is $4.475 million. So not $1 million grant, but they have authorized 4.475.
Yeah, but Rosie, we've only spent 1.1. We do not have at this point a price, because our price.
Jack, I'm just saying for the numbers here, that although we're waiting for it, just to correct the number that the CPC has pledged at this point, 4.475. I'm not saying it's done or not done. I'm just saying it's pledged.
That's absolutely true, but I don't think there's any way we can get it, because I don't think.
I know, but I'm just correcting the numbers here, Jack.
Okay. Well, we've actually spent 1.1.
Right.
CPC money.
Right.
Before we leave this page, if I may, Jack, Carolyn, in the first paragraph, we might add the Council on Aging. Senior services provided by the Council on Aging. Hello?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm writing it down as you're talking.
Okay. And I just want to reiterate, I know it's been covered that, and Jim, we have to be careful in categorizing the burden on the taxpayer resulting from use of CPC money. It is essentially a tax, well, under a different label.
Yeah, certainly.
And I think Jack has covered the present tense may be inappropriate here. The other thing I wanted to ask was in the penultimate paragraph, the town in 2014 explored the feasibility of building a new wastewater treatment, etc. What happened with that? What was the result of that exploration? I know it didn't happen, but was there a conclusion?
The problem, David, was that it envisioned putting in a treatment plant where the new building now is on Willow Street at Max Shoe Repair. And of course, that was the lowest point in town. And the problem was that if you were going to build a wastewater treatment plant, you had to build it for 2 or 3 times the present need.
Right.
So there was a huge capital investment and it got
Right.
voted down.
So what,
Right.
what I'm suggesting is there ought to be some comment as to what happened upon the conclusion of the exploration.
It was financially prohibitive. I think it was going to be somewhere between 10 to 14 million. And it was, and then there was the question of who was going to pay for it. The issue was betterments for people who live in the downtown or merchants. So it was a financial issue.
I
So
understand.
would you
and
like us to include a phrase that says, but determined it was financially prohibitive or something to that effect?
Yeah.
Something to that effect. Yes, thank you.
So
You got it.
I just on that, I had a question on that when we started. So I guess, and just to the point that, Kristen Piper made earlier, just like, and that the purpose of this, and it's been super helpful, is to all of us to get on the same page.
Yeah.
And in terms of the, that we're on Title V and the sewering issue and wastewater treatment, I guess I feel like I want to make sure we don't kind of assume things are dead issues, because there's so much more to talk about. And just the sewer capacity or not having sewer is like a major question that's going to run through this process. It's like, do you want this? Well, you can't have this because you don't have the sewer, because we don't have a sewer, and we're going to go back and forth a lot. So I want to make sure that it's in these early chapters that we don't kind of say, well, we did that in 14 and we decided it was too expensive then and we're not talking about it. So I mean, it's like, well, if you can get revenue, I don't know, there's going to be so many conditional statements. If you can do this, then we can do that. But I don't know, I want to understand that a little bit more, understand what happened in 2014, but also understand throughout, especially the land use discussion, where that point of maybe it's not cost prohibitive if we're making other decisions. So I guess
Christian, I'm not suggesting that we not talk about it or not consider it presently or in the future. I just want this to be accurate in terms of what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just want to make sure that in the course of the statement, you guys seem to have a lot of history with it, and I appreciate that. And I want to understand that more as we move forward through this. So
Yeah.
that's all. I agree that we should say certain things. I just want to make sure we say things with kind of an asterisk of at that time
Right.
it was determined, and then
Agreed.
if it's changed, then we can continue to talk about it.
Yeah,
And then-
totally. Oh,
Yeah.
Kristen, can I just reiterate that? Because I just think, like, there are some of us on this committee who are newer to the town and to this work, and we don't have that history. And so I think it is important for us to sort of check our assumptions, and previous decisions that have been made at the door, so that we can, so everything is an option at this point when we're talking about our master plan, because, things change. There are, different people in town than maybe there were in 2014. And like Kristen said, you might make one option that opens up a door that it didn't previously. So yeah, I agree. I think we should just be as open-minded as we possibly can about what's possible, even if it's been discussed in the past.
Right.
Well,
What
I
a-
think
what a
what we're
great
doing
point.
is just
So when-
giving a history
Yeah.
of what had happened. That's all. Nobody is saying that it's not a possibility for now. It's just as David had said, just closing a loop on what happened at that point. So
I think it's such a great point, and so important to recognize that existing conditions it's a static, it's a snapshot of
Right.
what's going on right now. And it doesn't necessarily dictate the future, though existing conditions point you in a certain direction. If you want to change that course, there's probably some work to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of
I
new
really
technology out
appreciate
there.
hearing from all of you who have that history, though. So don't get, I'm not at all saying that I don't want to hear all that. But to Jim and Carolyn, when we talk about water quality and infrastructure, are we going to talk more about kind of Title V and building capacity and septic? Is that going to be are we going to get more detail on the infrastructure that's in the ground here in Hamilton and how that affects what we can do next or what might need to change? Or is that part of this facilities discussion?
That is a concept actually that goes with the water resources end. It's called carrying capacity. It
Okay,
gets back to that nice pretty map that we had early on when you talk about the soil capability to assimilate wastewater. And actually, it looks like the town back in the early 80s, when it did its groundwater protection overlay, actually took that into account when they established the original overlays, because they were based on the number of houses. They weren't necessarily based on the influence of the groundwater resource, because that's how they explain it in the legend. It was rather interesting. But that's kind of an approach that bases on carrying capacity, assuming there's so much recharge and you base it on the amount of recharge that you want to preserve it. But that kind of went away and got more in tune with the quality end, which is kind of consistent currently where Massachusetts is, with the DEP is, when they look at the zone 2s. But early on, the part about how much water was available was actually taken into account also. I actually used that point so I could jump in. I just wanted to get one other point of clarification so I could understand something. Are you saying that the one of the reasons that the wastewater treatment system also was considered not feasible, it wasn't just the cost, but Jack, did you say it had to be designed for like 3 times the flow that you currently had available? And
Yeah,
that's
it was
the
said that,
price.
it was said that it should have expansion capacity of a factor of 2 or 3 times.
Okay, so that gets back to, I think, the point that everyone else is making in terms of looking into the future. It's kind of like the tail wagging the dog, where
Right.
you build the plant and they will come. You know, it's the same kind of idea. You didn't really have the demand for the plant. So that's really, I think, a major point besides just the cost.
It is.
Because that gets back to, I think, the more fundamental reasons as to why you wouldn't have it at that time.
Well, let me just tell you, Frank, that the other point on that is that it did not take, it was a certain technology and it didn't have the flexibility. Enon Village, which is Wenham's affordable housing project, which is right on the border of Hamilton behind the shopping center, is capped off because of septic capacity. So there are all kinds of potential ways of skinning this cat, none of which were looked at. And with some of the new underground tanks that have tertiary treatment potential, where you just skim off the solids periodically and do things of that nature, and then if you've got tertiary treated water, we probably have space in the schooling field or somewhere like that where we could actually re-inject that water back into the ground and maybe have the benefit from other ways. I think there are other ways. With the new technologies, there are other ways to skin the cat. Just
there
more
are a huge
information.
number of technologies out there, and like you say, a lot of ways to skin the cat.
Yeah.
At the master plan level, it's the sort of thing that you look at and say, what kind of decision does the town want to make? Do they want to go more in the sewer direction? Do they want to stay more on the, the on-site individual system kind of direction? And are there parts of the town where it might make sense to do something a little bit different than what you have right now?
Yeah.
And then recommend like some sort of an engineering study on that, because the master plan itself won't give you enough information to make like a really final decision. It'll give you enough information to set you in a direction.
So
I
to
think
to tie the past to the present and future, the reasons for the rejection in 2014, they remain, in fact, in terms of cost, and currently no demand. So one interesting question to me is, does Hamilton want to invest in that in order to stimulate future demand, future commercial development? Since, as I understand it, the lack of this kind of system is a clear impediment to commercial developers.
Well, that's which is the tail and which is the dog. That's one of the things that we'll get into in the course of this plan. And that's, you know, that's a whole study that would need to be done under certain circumstances with certain assumptions. All we're talking about here now is history, as we've said, and it really doesn't rule anything out.
Jack, my point just being is if you're going to have that, just to put things in perspective from timing, you know, rather than always just have it hanging on money, it really was hanging on money and availability of technology at the time. Because really, in fact, the technology before the money, because I think that's really what drove the money, was the technology not being available at that point. And I think that puts things in a clearer picture. And I think what Jim was saying is, you know, you're not going to provide anything on the master plan level beyond putting that out there. Things have changed since 2014, and that goes in another direction for another day.
Yeah. Well, the only other point I want to make is that the GPOD was done by Haley and Aldrich back in the 80s. The guy who was the president of Haley and Aldrich at the time is a citizen of Hamilton, and he will tell you where the strengths and weaknesses of that study were. He has said to me himself that there are tweaks that can and should be done in order to bring it up to date with the Title V stuff and all the rest of Title II, whatever it is. So that's another resource we do have in town that we can bring him into this thing if we need to.
I have one last question on this page. It deals with the last sentence. Rosie, maybe you can tell us, do we have a local emergency planning committee?
It's the chief of police.
I think it's the fire chief and the police chief. They do the emergency plan. In fact, it's Ray who really deals with most emergencies. I don't know if I would say a committee, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, that perhaps, Carolyn, you might talk to Joe, the town manager, about what the proper phrase is for that.
Right.
Okay, in the last paragraph, what is the Hamilton Meeting House? Does anybody know?
Do they mean the community house?
Yeah, probably the community house.
I think that just needs to be, resolved as to what the intent is there, because we don't have anything that, to my knowledge, is called the Hamilton Meeting House.
No, we do not.
So if somebody puts their GPS on that.
I mean, someone should double check, but I do believe that the community center is a designated meeting point, so I think that it's probably the community house. Somebody, I don't know who to ask, but somebody should check on that, but I think it is probably the community house.
Okay,
If you
going over
Google
to
Hamilton Meeting House, the community's house comes up, so yeah.
Okay, which is a private institution. It's not a town, I mean, it's a town presence, but it's not a town facility.
Right.
However, we have put CPA money into it, which I'm not sure how we did that. The whole trash situation, I think, has got to be revised to a certain extent, because we talk about compostable trash and we talk about waste that goes off to the burner. We don't talk about the recycling. And that's the third leg of the stool.
Got it.
So we, in theory, have no wet garbage because that all goes to composting. And we have the recycling component, and God knows it may go to the burner too, but that's something that what it says here isn't true. The other thing is that the Miles River does take most of the drainage flow from 1A, and it actually goes into the Ipswich River above Ipswich. So we don't have any wells, to my knowledge, in the Miles River basin. We had one, it didn't produce very much, and there's no pump in the bore right now. The other thing is I grew up in the so-called Winthrop Street neighborhood, and the Willowdale Dam could fail every day, never create a hazard for that neighborhood. It's only about a 5-foot head of water. And the houses that are contiguous are all on high land removed from the water course.
That's good to know. That was pulled from the hazard mitigation plan, so we'll revise that.
Somebody's dreaming about that one.
Somebody was feeling especially pessimistic when they wrote that.
Well, I can tell you that there are signs there now saying if you fall in the river, if you've got a canoe from foot and you paddled up into the marsh and you fall into the river, they're saying, you know, watch out for the flow because you stand warned. And on the horse bridge above foot, there's a ring that can be thrown to bodies in the water because they're trying to escape not drowning. But below, with the dam blue, it wouldn't make a damn bit of difference. No wall of water. Talking about Green Meadows Farm is long gone.
Yeah, if you guys have more information on other sort of sustainable businesses in the town that we might want to, you know, be aware of or feature, that would be helpful.
Okay, Greenbelt has taken over that farm. I've never heard of Mr. Bradshaw. If somebody can explain to me who Mr. Bradshaw and his innovation and sustainability headquarters is, I would be educated because that's a new one on me.
Yeah, that one's really interesting because it's just, as far as I can tell, it's somebody who used Hamilton as their mailing address and then held multiple events in the area, sort of international sustainability summits. So if nobody's heard of him, then apparently he was going under the radar, but living in the area.
And the Pingree School, I'm sure the Pingree School talks a lot about sustainability, but I don't know of any initiative that affects the town. I'm sure they have good intention.
Yeah, I wondered about that too. I wondered whether, like, are they doing, I mean, they certainly own a lot of property, so it's possible that they're doing sustainability that is beneficial to the land, but I felt the same way. I didn't really know about any actual initiatives that are in.
Well, I'm on their website and it just says food and brown paper is composted. Fresh vegetables and herbs are grown in the greenhouse, and they have an aquaponics system for alternate farming, including aquaculture.
I don't know. Dana, do you know about that? I don't know about that.
Well, those sounds like all things that they're just doing, you know, at the school that aren't,
Yeah.
you know, the Miles River Middle School, you know, has we have a, you know, an aquaponics wall also.
Well, that's what it would be great if we could see what the public schools are doing. I don't know.
There you go. And you all do know it's a regional school, right?
Yeah.
They're not, we do own 2 of the buildings.
Yeah, Jack, we kind of moved quickly and I actually wrote down that I was gonna just send Caroline some notes on the specifics about the school. I mean, I don't know that it's, we sort of moved too quickly.
Well, I also think the schools almost need their own.
Right, no, I was saying just on the, you know, I mean, since we're talking about it, I'll just say we don't need to go back to that paragraph, but I'll just clarify that, like, there are 5 schools in the district. 4 of the schools are in Hamilton. So the Bucher School is actually in Wenham. So it's listed in that list. It is part of the school district, but it's actually located in Wenham.
Got it.
The high school and the middle school are in Hamilton, are on the same property and are owned or by the district. And then the Winthrop School and the Cutler School are town properties.
Okay.
But I'm happy to just move that all up. And then someone asked about the integrated preschool. We do have an integrated preschool, and it is located at the Winthrop School.
Okay.
Caroline, just for your information, what I brought up tonight, I've written up and I sent it to Patrick. It probably hasn't come to you because he's not here. But hopefully when he gets back, it will come to you. And if you want me to send it to you directly, I would perform that illegal service.
Yeah, well, we'll save Patrick another thing to do when he gets back. So yeah, send it to me. That way we can keep everything together while it's fresh.
Okay, good. Will do.
Thanks.
All right, those were my points.
Great. Sounds good.
Anybody else do we have anybody else who wants to add anything?
So
On the summary, there were a whole lot of typos too, but I don't want to go through all those at the moment. I mean, those will be clear.
Yeah,
too.
we'll clean all those up. We had to put the data together and get it out the door fairly quickly. So
Can I just add, I just wanted to, I didn't feel like I think we were just looking at the paragraph regarding the farming and farm stands and that sort of thing. I didn't know, I don't really have a clear note, but maybe somebody else does. It didn't feel like it actually really captured what really, I don't know if other people felt that way. Like, it said something like, or I'm not looking at it now, but it said something like, there are many private farmers and grocery stores host. I don't know that really captured what's really going on. I don't know if anyone else has a note.
well, yeah, it's pretty vague. And this isn't going in the plan. This is just, what we've been able to turn up. And so I think some of the people we had researching this were going online and looking at old plans. And if that information isn't there to be found, then we don't know. So that's why we rely on you. So if you do think of things that pop into your head after you leave here, something that is more of a sustainable business or something that is kind of pushing that ball forward, just, shoot an email to Patrick and that way we can have more accurate information.
So Caroline, I will tell you that, yes, what is it? The Green Meadows Farm was sold to the Greenbelt, and there is a young couple who have taken it over. Is it Ox Farm?
Yeah.
Iron Ox Roses.
Iron Ox, that's right. And so they are doing a sustainable farm there. They're just starting this year, so I don't know how accomplished they are, but that's a bona fide organic, sustainable entity.
It's great. And I'll just mention what we're interested in here particularly is not only, agriculture is sort of a bigger piece that isn't going to be in other sections, but is there a relationship with local foods? Is there support for getting foods from the local farms into the community? That's really what we're trying to get at. So we look at things like a farmer's market or a farm stand as one way that can happen.
Well, and I think that's what their plan is, these new farmers. So, and obviously they're just getting up and going, but yes, that's sort of something you can talk about as being imminently going to happen.
The problem will be that Marini was farming that land before Iron Ox came there, and therefore it's not at the moment organic. He was using fertilizers and all that kind of stuff that would not have been eligible. So that it will become organic, but it's what, 3 years or something until they're actually going to be organic. The other thing that I wanted to note on facilities partnerships, our rec program is also a partnership with Wenham.
Jack, I think that's actually a really good point. It's actually an unusual, most towns do not like that. All the youth sports, everything from the beginning. When your kid signs up for kindergarten soccer, it's Hamilton Wenham youth soccer, all the rec programs, all the little league. I actually do think that's an important point.
Oh, and the pool, that includes the pool. And there was some talk about the wind energy facility. We don't have a wind energy facility. We did a test out at the closed landfill. And it failed. It said there wasn't enough wind there to be worthwhile putting up a wind turbine.
We
But we're
just
getting, we're
saw
getting all the
the,
lawyers together in the community to see if we can generate enough wind.
so the specifics on that was not that we found a wind energy facility in the town, but that you have it in your zoning, you have allowed it as a use and you've put some bounds on that as far as we understood.
Okay. But there's nothing now. And I don't know of anybody who's trying to do that,
No, I don't either.
which surprised me because we had high land over there at the landfill, the dump, and we just didn't. The wind coming off the ocean, you would have thought would have maybe a higher tower or something would have done it, but it was pretty useless.
Oh, I did want to comment in terms of the solar power, electric power initiatives. In addition to the landfill, I think, Rosie, I think this is correct. We continue to explore other areas, other facilities that would lend themselves to solar power.
I'm not aware of any specifics, but I would say that that is true, David. Rooftops, municipal rooftops. I think there's a plan to have some solar panels. I think it was it the high school or
They
maybe
said the high school
the library.
The high school doesn't have the structure.
So maybe it's the library.
I can't believe the water treatment plant, I think is in train to go that direction.
I don't think anything's imminent. I think things are still on the planning board and on the planning phase. I'm not aware of anything imminent, Jack.
Well, the study was done.
Right. And I thought, it's hard. These things fall out of my head. There's so much stuff in there. But I thought that there was a plan, at least the study showed that it was feasible to do some solar panels on some building. I don't remember if it was the library or if it was the high school. I just don't remember.
I think it's the water treatment plant and the library, the two good possibilities. That they say at the high school, the structure won't carry them. I can't believe that's true. I'm sure Dana's going to find a way to do that.
I just wanted to say I did think it would not yet rise to the level where it would have been on any planning board or anything, but
no, I meant to the planning phase, Dana. I'm sorry.
I actually meant to say planning phase. But what I was going to say is I have had some communication with a woman named Sue Petrolia, who I don't know, but I had spoken to her briefly, and she was asking about, I guess, Hamilton Wenham Green is doing some investigating into some solar, and then I don't think it's any at the planning stage. I think they're in the exploration stage. But one of the things they were asking about was potential solar panels at the over the parking at the high school, like as a canopy.
That'd be good.
That's not something that is in the works in any way. This was just a preliminary conversation, and I put her, directed her to talk to, not the school committee, but anyway, it does sound like Hamilton Wenham Green has some,
So, Carolyn, this is another area you might check with Joe about. I know there's a young lady who is serving as a consultant, I think, to both Wenham and Hamilton regarding this kind of issue and the progress that we might make.
Is that Vicky Masson?
That's her.
Yeah.
That's her. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the name again?
Vicky Masson, Massone.
Okay, thank you.
And she's working for both towns and the schools.
On energy efficiency type issues?
On the potential for photovoltaic arrays and any other energy efficiency issues. She's our expert consultant.
Okay.
Good, I'd forgotten her name. You do mention her, you do refer to her in here, but I couldn't remember her name and it wasn't in there.
Okay. Well, great. Any other comments? I had put this meeting till a little longer than our usual meetings. I had put it till 8. Just because I wanted to make sure that everything, that we would be talking about, it was included. I do have a few more things on the agenda. I don't know if you have the energy to take those up right now.
Can I ask a quick question just to clarify a couple things? So one of the things I think would be helpful, and I was starting to write it in the chat, but is to have some sort of table that's like, energy sources, like electric, gas / solar, and then like who are the sort, kind of like, when you have like find your rep, and then it's a whole table, like your governor is this, your representative. So it's like, what's your power, what's the then we are that we're on septic, that just kind of like outline it quick in this section of just a quick like snapshot. So
Yeah.
then you can read it, but it's like, this is the basic infrastructure facts that you should know. And then I wanted to know if at some point you're going to get to kind of a question, that analysis of like the Title V limitations, because we're on septic, and kind of education limitations just somewhere, whether it's in a different section. I think it is important to understand what stormwater measures we do have in place now, if we have some. And then just, are you including kind of the flood maps? Then I know there's new flood maps out, like how does that affect the discussion on land use and other things as we move forward? Let's see. And then the other question I had is we already said is like kind of itemizing those protected areas, and or like what Jack was mentioning of 61A and B, Article 97, like what are they? What are we dealing with here? And that's probably in your land use section. And that's kind of all I have for now, but really wanted to just kind of get a better outline of just infrastructure that exists in town now, and have it be kind of an easy read, and then go into the details. So that's all I have for now. But otherwise, I thank all of you for giving at least me an education on kind of just different things that happened in the past. So I think that's exactly what I was envisioning, of kind of the facts, and then debate a little bit of what's what, and then really get on a better single page for all of us. So I think we can then help educate and inform the public, so we get informed responses that we can from the public in this plan. So thank you.
Kristen, there's one other point which you just spurred my memory on, and that is, as we covet the potential for redeveloping the Winthrop School site someday, right behind it is a huge gas pipeline, which, to the extent that gas is still an acceptable fossil fuel, or as long as it is, that for a commercial development of some sort could be invaluable. And that is a part of our infrastructure. It runs right through town.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Just kind of a better snapshot of what's here in this existing condition would be helpful, of what, at least what we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can get that summary for the next data presentation. And we can definitely touch, I think, as we talk about land use, I don't want to overload you. But as we think about this, right, we're thinking about some of the things that Frank brought up, and how land uses can, and how we handle stormwater could potentially benefit, your water supply, especially as we see new technologies. Right now, when I'm working in Wenham, we're actually working on regulations for their stormwater and climate change, and how, I don't know that there's huge things that you can do, but like Joanna said, there's nature-based solutions that are infrastructure solutions that could be installed, trees, there's a xeriscaping, there are things that you can do at the local level to start picking away at some of those issues.
Is Wenham undertaking a master plan, Carolyn?
They have been talking about it. I have not seen their request for proposals yet.
Thank you.
But they have definitely started the process. If you go on their website, they have a whole page, and they're definitely getting the buzz going.
Thank you.
That's good.
All right. Oh, and also survey questions. We do have that on this agenda. I don't know if you want to take some time to think about it and digest everything, and then pick that up at a different time, because we are running a little bit short on time here. So
I just want to make a few very generic comments, not ask any specific question. That giving responders the opportunity to have 4 or 5 choices for a given question seems to me to be inappropriate. That is, asking them how much they want something, what the degrees of preference seems to me to be a little too complex to get people engaged in, do you want this, yes or no? To me, would be a better approach.
You're saying that maybe a ranking matrix might be better than just saying, hey, do you want, better parks or something?
Or
saying,
do you want better parks a lot, less than a lot, the middle
right.
ground? That's what I'm saying is probably counterproductive.
Yeah. No, those are just junk questions. I don't think that's going to help us very much.
Are we looking at, what document are we looking at a document right now?
Not yet, no.
Talking about I know we've had some survey discussions. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing.
No. All right, well, one other thing, Cindy, can you queue up that video? I tried to show them last time and I did not get my hands on it correctly, but that might be an okay way to end this.
The video was pretty good. It's just some of the facts that we've gone over tonight are stated in there, and they need to be combed out to some extent.
Okay, so you were able to see it then?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Is that because you were the star of it, Jack? So.
No, I don't appear anywhere in it, David. Otherwise, it might have snapped.
In this video, you'll learn about Hamilton's master plan, what it covers, and why we need to update it. A master plan is a document that guides all municipal budgeting, projects, and policy for the next 10 to 20 years, and it is required by Massachusetts state law. All future town plans and policies must be consistent with the town's master plan. Community needs, laws and standards, resources, and the environment are key considerations in developing this master plan. Master plan directs development and growth, which in turn affects tax policy and municipal budgeting. Master plans also provide long-term guidance for town services and facilities to ensure that the community is continually served. It is also used to define natural resource areas and spaces that need protection from future development to sustain the longevity of the natural environment and related public code benefits. Through these goals and objectives, the plan creates a framework for future policy decisions and promotes open and democratic planning through inclusive community participation. Community participation in this process helps to strengthen and celebrate local values and identity. The plan revolves around 4 main elements. The first key element is the community vision statement. This is an overarching statement that contains the community's aspirations for the future of Hamilton. This will be crafted from the public hearings and meetings with you. The second element in the master plan is the existing conditions assessment, which is based on research and data analysis. This information will be translated into trends, estimates, and future projections, which comprise a needs assessment and may be displayed in the plan through charts, tables, and maps. An overview of the analysis and resulting recommendations will be provided in each section of the plan. The sections shown here are preliminary and can be adjusted as needed. Each of these sections should consider all town operations and services. All of this information informs the goals, policies, and actions in the implementation section of the plan. Drafts of the updated master plan will be presented to the public for comment and reviewed by the steering committee. Eventually, the town will ultimately adopt the updated master plan and work to implement the actions defined in it. We hope that you understand a little more about the master plan process. You can also explore the project webpage to get more information and to see Hamilton's current master plan. We will post opportunities to participate in the master planning process here as well.
All right. Well, first of all, can I let my other Weston and Sampson mates go for the evening? All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim, Frank, Joanna.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. We appreciate the opportunity to work with you.
Yes. Bye.
It's a big job, as you can see.
Yeah, you guys are great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So, and the reason we're kind of pushing this tonight is because we're looking ahead to that visioning workshop in November, and we want to make sure that everything that we have is ready to go. And if that's okay to put up on the website, if you're okay with it, if you have comments or corrections, we could take care of that. And then with the smaller committee, I'd like to get with you sooner rather than later. I'm thinking that with our new email list that you guys work so hard to get, that we should probably do a save the date via email and maybe have a newsletter or something to kind of get people to understand, what's there, what they will be engaged in, that kind of thing. Okay, good.
So Caroline, the subcommittee, Emil, Kristen, and me are going to meet tomorrow morning again to follow up. And so we could maybe schedule a call with you maybe next week or the week after. But yes, we talked about sending we wanted to create the poster first to put up around town.
Yeah.
And then I was tasked with, I haven't done it yet because I think like that video is a great thing to post, but I'm going to post on our community Facebook groups an invite or, save the date for folks. And then we were going to ask Patrick to put something up on the town website. So we do have some outreach and engagement ideas.
Great. Okay. And also, just before I lose a thought, I'm meeting with our landscape design group tomorrow. And we're trying to think about the workshop itself. Like they had just some ideas because it's a middle school. They're thinking that maybe soccer will be going on and that maybe parking might be an issue, but it's also an opportunity to potentially lure people in. So just as you're talking tomorrow, think about breakout groups. How do we get people? We had talked about maybe doing a Hamilton passport where people can go to different tables and learn about something before they engage, and just, that sort of thing. Hopefully between the two groups, we can come together and get our system sorted out.
Well, I think it would be helpful. I mean, Kristen, Emil, and I met. It just really, and Kristen sent the email out of kind of just literally just kind of what we're thinking about in terms of the time frame. I don't know if
that looked great.
Kristen, it'll probably take you like 3 minutes to describe it if you don't mind talking about kind of just what we were thinking about and what you already put in writing, just to kind of get like a thumbs up from the group. I think it would be helpful just so when we meet, we can talk more about just how to the administration of that, because I think that's what we had planned on, of just giving a brief update to the group so we can get buy-in and so we can keep marching along.
Yeah, so we envisioned so the event starts at 9:30 and we do have space secured at the middle school. Thank you, Dana, for helping with that. And so from 9:30 to 10, we were hoping to have people just be able to mill about the room. There would be things around the room for people to look at, to digest, like you just said, Carolyn, coffee, refreshments, etc. And then at 10 o'clock, we would ideally turn it over to Weston and Sampson to do a quick high-level overview of what a master plan is and what's involved in the process. We were thinking about keeping that to about 15 minutes and then maybe allowing 15 minutes for questions or discussion. And then after.
Is that enough, Carolyn?
Just questions on the master plan and the process, not questions, not in-depth questions yet. And then we would break out into breakout groups. And we thought it would be a good idea to keep them very high level and fun. So instead of having the topics be like land use and conservation and water, because I don't think people will be super excited about that stuff, to have it be around Emil's, what do we want to protect? What do we want to grow? What do we want to provide, et cetera, like those broader topics. And then we can assign what comes up to those more technical headings for the plan. So we would do that breakout group discussion for about 45 minutes, I think. And ideally the steering committee members and Weston and Sampson staff would be facilitators of those groups and scribes. And then each group would pick someone to do a report out that's not a steering committee member or a Weston and Sampson staff member. And then we do report outs of the groups for about half hour. And then I think 15 minutes-ish at the end to just kind of do a wrap up and talk about next steps.
Yep.
So that was our vision. I think the plan is for it to end around noon.
Mhm.
And if that sounds good to everyone, then we can start fleshing out some more details. One thing that I think we do need to work on is like an informal facilitator guide for each of the breakout groups.
Right.
That would help prompt, ask questions, facilitate the discussion so that we're not just kind of sitting there hoping people say things. So we'd put together something like that. And
Now,
then again, have a scribe.
Are you thinking you all will be facilitators? I'm bringing probably about 5 to 6 people from Weston and Sampson. So they can actually serve your breakout groups and you guys can mill around too. So
That was a big question I had. That was a question I had on what is going to be the involvement from beginning to end with Weston and Sampson. So as I understand, you're going to lead off with the introduction of the topics, the general. We're then going to, well, first of all, I think it'd be great if Jack, if you can be there just to open up as chair, Jack and Kristen as co-chairs for the committee, turn it over to Weston and Sampson. And then you can speak again. We're going to break down into so many groups of maximum 10 per table or so. But if you could provide Caroline the facilitators at all those tables, that would be great, because the information that needs to come out of that is pretty specific and it has to be a definite vision. So it is a tricky thing to do. So that'd be good if you could do that. And
definitely we can do that. We had talked about letting people do maybe a Slido word cloud or giving, if people are gonna, if they're gonna be there, they can. A Slido is just something, it's something you can do on your phone and you can ask people survey questions, but you can also say, you can ask them for a word and then it calculates all of the words in the room that are most common and those become a word cloud. So some words are bigger and some words are smaller, and it gives it for a visioning exercise. It gives you a lot of verbs and actions and things that you can use later on.
am I correct? Because one question I have is that in facilitating the various tables, that the two approach, it's really not like a survey, because the survey is a response from one person to a topic. What this should produce is more of a discussion amongst members at the table. So it has to be a discussion that leads to a particular point. And the facilitator is not really, is sort of guiding to keep people on track, but not really offering a particular opinion about anything.
Yeah,
So,
I didn't mean in the breakouts. I meant like as they're wandering around or they're getting coffee, we can have little stations that ask them a question, and then we can start skimming off some feedback on that.
And Carolyn, I think if you're going to offer the facilitators, it may make sense, and some committee teammates, feel free to kick me under the virtual table, but it might make sense for you to take the first stab at the facilitator guide and then let us take a look and edit it. To again achieve Emil's, we want it to be a discussion. We want to keep it fun and high level and light and not, technical. So maybe we can help do some of that framing. But if you want to take the first stab at the facilitator guide.
We're going to have scribes. Will we have scribes at the tables? Are we going to, there's going to be there'll be some kind of written summary of ideas that have come out of all this that we can then distill.
That might be something that the members could do.
Usually you want to task the public as much as possible, because it is, their plan, and if they're just watching us do something that's not quite as engaging. Oh, and also we have a tent. We did this in Boston Common. It was kind of fun. I'm just wondering if we put like a tent out in front of the middle school and kind of caught people as they were coming in. I don't know what. I haven't really thought beyond that, but we were talking like maybe just to keep it where it's at a school, like have like a country fair kind of like fun stuff outside, especially if people are having their children kind of milling through. I don't know, think about it, like,
There was another nice technique where you put a large map at the entrance into the gathering. And then you would ask people to put identify one or two places with just, a glue-on dot or something on this map of their favorite place in Hamilton,
yeah.
just to sort of get them thinking about.
Yeah, I think they
that's gonna
did
be
something similar at the launch, and I think Kristen just
Yeah.
asked me to print off a bunch of those type of maps, so,
Would be good to have one at every table, certainly. And
yeah,
then,
I would.
I think the other thing, Carolyn, because you mentioned kids, that Kristen, Emil and I talked about was because it is a Saturday morning, I'm sort of anticipating that the young family kid crowd is probably not going to come. And
Mhm.
so we came up with the idea to do the same exact workshop essentially, but remotely only, not hybrid. Maybe a few weeks later in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and doing it in the evening on a weekday. To capture maybe those folks who can't, make it on a Saturday morning. And so, some things would have to be modified, obviously, but on a Zoom, you can do breakout groups and such. And so we should, if we're going to do that, we should probably like pick a date.
Yeah,
and
especially as
do
we're
a
going
save the
into
date as
holidays.
well. Yeah, but we
Right.
thought that would be a good way to capture, kind of plenty of people and different people with different schedules.
Yep.
How are we dealing with COVID on this thing? With everybody in masks, or I mean, I'm assuming Hamilton is such an enlightened place that everybody's triple shot, but it's probably not a good assumption.
So currently at this moment, the school has a mask requirement for all individuals entering the school building. I don't anticipate that would change before. I cannot speak for the committee, but I do not anticipate that would change before November 13th.
So you're going to have a sign at the door that says, "All ye who enter here shall be masked"?
Well, maybe we could order some masks, master plan masks or something.
There is a Hamilton mask. There is a box somewhere of Hamilton masks that can be given out for those who are come without. And I think we need to have a couple of cops, to tell you the truth, because somebody's going to try and get in there without a mask, and that would be a disaster.
Yeah.
Well, I
don't
think
bouncers.
If that general plan sounds good to everyone, then I think Chris and Emil and I can do a little bit more planning tomorrow, and I can send an email out like I did last time to keep everyone in the loop. And then Caroline, maybe we can schedule a call next week to further delineate roles.
Sounds good.
I think you're doing a great job. I think it's wonderful. You're pulling it together. It's just, the devil's going to be in the details, of course, and it's just a matter. But I do want to see, hopefully, a scribed product coming out of this that captures every kind of idea, and we'll see how they fit into the whole at the end of the day.
So I think that's going to be a group process, I think, with the whole committee, Master Plan Steering Committee, when we take all the data, if maybe the subcommittee can sort of categorize it. But I think then it's going to be up to this group, I think, to kind of sort out what information and how it should be placed into the document eventually.
Yes, exactly.
So one thing I wanted to add, it's as a precursor to the community meeting on November 13th, is there's, and actually I talked to Christine Kasner about this, and there's a sort of a Halloween trick-or-treating thing going on the 30th. It's a Saturday from 1 to 3. It's in Patton Park around Weaver Pond. And I got a notice from the rec committee that said, are you interested in a table or decorating the trunk of your car? And I thought, a table might be nice, as sort of another opportunity to let people know what's going on, sort of another informational session, much like that very successful fall festival idea. And so I do have a table, and I'm thinking, I have some ideas about how to send home information with parents who come with their kids trick-or-treating. And so I wonder what people think about that and if people would like to help out for the 2-hour time span.
Do we have to come in uniform? In costume?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know. How would you costume up a master plan? I don't know.
Curious thing, I've got an Arab costume. I could come in my Arab costume.
Well, you can come however you'd like, Jack, but I'm probably.
That was not a serious offer.
But it is supposed to be for trick or treating, and we do want to attract people. And Kristen, I'm Kristen K. I'm hoping that you will have more of your literature left over, and if other people have ideas, because we've maybe added 1 or 2 more things to it in terms of our general information. I'm thinking maybe put a little goodie bag of candies together, a little couple of little mini candy bars, and then throw some literature in the bag. So if parents are in a hurry, they could take that with them. I don't know. What do people think?
I think it's a great idea. I have all the stuff from when we did Shop Local, but Caroline, I did email you. We do need more I want and I value sheets.
I saw
So I
that.
just need to get those printed. If we can pick them up. The event, Rosie, the event's on the 30th. Oh, no, wait.
It is on the 30th. It's on Saturday, the 30th, from 1
October.
until 3.
This is October, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so Saturday, so we just need more boards, or more. I have boards. I just need more of the big printed.
Okay. Yeah, I can send those to Staples if you can pick them up. I mean, the ones I gave you last time, I actually printed at Weston and Sampson, but it doesn't cost a lot, so we can do that.
Okay, yeah, I gave you because the I want boards go pretty quick. The I value it's a little slower, so I don't think we need as many. And then so I think that's good. And then just so I totally agree, and I won't like to hear, but I want to make sure we talk about putting something in the library and the Council on Aging. I know, David, you reached out to the Council on Aging, and are we all in agreement to do the I want, I value boards in those 2 locations for a little while as well, and maybe have the pamphlet to come to the November 13th event as well? Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so David, I'll work with you to try to make sure you get all the materials we need, and figure out the slot of time. But then back to Rosie and the question about the pumpkin event. I'll leave it to the.
Rosie,
I heard that. I'm sorry, Dana. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's only a couple of hours, that trick or treating event, right? So it would be. I mean, I'm happy to come, and if somebody else wants to come, and I think
Great. Yeah.
you know.
I was told that there'll be the estimate at this point is about 200 to 250 family groups. So I think that's a good opportunity to greet people and encourage them to come to the planning session on the 13th.
What's the time span, Rosie?
From 1 until 3. So it's not it's not burdensome. I think time-wise, it's just a few hours.
Yeah, okay, no, that's good.
Yeah, Rosie, I'm happy to help out with that. I think I'll be there trick-or-treating in costume with Ollie at some point, so.
Yay! That will be a great attraction.
At Patton Park,
It's going to be right near the gazebo. And, maybe we could wear costumes. I don't know. I have I have a ghost I could bring. I have some sort of decorations. We don't want all the kids to come to our table.
This is the one where they carve the pumpkins and decorate the pumpkin, put them around the pond.
Exactly correct. Yes, but they'll be doing the pumpkin thing at 6, so that anybody who is in fear of missing the pumpkin celebration, you won't miss it if you come and help out from 1 to 3.
Rosie, is that just for Wenham or Hamilton, or does it include Wenham?
It probably, that's a good question. It probably includes Wenham also.
If it's rec, it would be, yeah. If it's rec, that's combined.
Yep. But that's fine.
Rosie, I can probably help too, but I've got to check some things since I've got 2 little ones and I don't know if they'll need to be in tow or can stay home.
Okay,
Or
well,
both.
great. Would love to have you, them, and or both. So that's wonderful. Thank you.
Carolyn,
I think
before we, before,
information to go into the candy bags is the website cards. Do you guys still have more of those? And the flyer, I guess, that we just sent to you guys for that November 13th event.
Perfect.
David,
Okay.
you-
I just wanted to say, Carolyn, for me, the audio on the video was a little spotty. So perhaps you might try to perfect that a bit.
Yeah, it was definitely, I don't know if it was Zoom or
Yeah.
what, but we'll take a look at it.
Thank
I
you.
think
I guess it might have,
It was Zoom.
yeah, I think so too, because I think on the Dropbox, it's perfect.
yeah, the Dropbox it was good. The music's a little spooky, but
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Halloween. All right, well, have a good evening. Thank you for your patience during our data presentations. And until next time.
okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any further comment? We stand adjourned at
roll call, roll call.
what? Roll call. Roll call. All right, all in favor, say aye, beginning with, okay, Dana,
Aye.
Emil,
Aye.
Lauren,
Aye.
Kristen Kasner,
Aye.
Rosie,
Aye.
Jack, aye. Rick Mitchell's not here. Kristen Piper,
Aye.
David Wenger.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.
Be well all.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
8:13.